Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to this month's Specpoint Coffee Break session. Specpoint Coffee Breaks are your monthly 30-minute dive into the world of AI MasterSpec, powered by Deltek Specpoint, the trusted standard for specification excellence. My name is BC Williams, your Specpoint Engagement Manager. Please utilize the Q&A section for all questions. Do not use the chat as it is not being monitored and we cannot respond to raised hands. A copy of today's webinar will be emailed in a few days. And today we will address AIA MasterSpec and Specpoint, how to export Word docs from Specpoint, how to access MasterSpec updates and release notes, getting started with Specpoint, followed by the Q&A session, and finally, the three-part Specpoint training webinars. Joining me on today's topic, exporting MasterSpec Word docs from Specpoint, is a familiar face, Product Director of Specpoint, Chris Metropolis. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Hi, BC. Thanks for inviting me back.
Yeah, glad to always have you here with us. Do you have your coffee or beverage of choice ready with you?
I have coffee and water. I'm good.
Perfect. Good to go. All right. And also joining us for the very first time and is a familiar voice to customers who may have reached out to our Spec Solutions Support Services Department in the past, a Senior Support Services Analyst, Jared Liskey. Hi, Jared.
Hi, BC. How's it going?
Good, good. A very big welcome to you both. All
Thanks for
right.
having me.
Okay, and your audio is a little low, Jerry. Could you turn that up a little bit for us, please? Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Now, Deltek equips you with cutting-edge tools and resources to ensure confident specification. We achieve this by offering the industry-leading AIA MasterSpec integrated with advanced software technology through Specpoint. MasterSpec has been the most trusted and widely used guide specification resource in the industry for more than 5 decades. As the steward of AIA MasterSpec, Deltek is committed to ongoing research and updates carried out by a team of licensed architects and engineers. The AIA sponsors A&E review committees to provide input on MasterSpec sections, new products, building product manufacturers, and industry trends. MasterSpecs is now available on a new intelligent database-driven platform, enhancing specification development efficiency. Specpoint, the new home of AIA MasterSpec, offers over 50,000 product listings, many of which meet MasterSpec's stringent standards, ensuring confidence in your specification development. AIA MasterSpec, powered by Deltek Specpoint, the trusted standard for specification excellence. And as a segue to today's topic, we understand that customers are at various stages of transitioning or adopting Specpoint. And knowing that some customers may have the need to complete in-flight projects using their current processes and procedures, we want to demonstrate how to access MasterSpec Word docs within Specpoint. And for that, I would hand over to Jared to help demo and walk us through those steps. And over to you, Jared.
Thank you much, BC. Is this volume a little bit better?
This is perfect. Thank you.
Beautiful. No problem. Well, hi, everybody. We'll try and make this as short and sweet as I can. Let me grab my screen share here. Okay. So, typically what you would see is just your Specpoint window. Going over here, first, what you're going to want to do is actually create your project. Now, I won't go through the whole ins and outs of it, but I'll just generate a new project for you all here. We'll do my test project numbers, test project 3, and et cetera, et cetera. You would go through and fill out the rest of the required fields in Specpoint. After that, we won't actually create it now because I have one in flight. Once you have created your project, you can start adding in your sections. Let me wait for this to load. Typically, I like to do division view as opposed to assembly, but that's just a personal choice there. But you'll go in to what you're used to seeing here, and you can add a couple of different sections. As you see, I have a few already added just for my own testing, but we'll add a few. All right, so let's go and do a couple of metal sections. You can hold Shift or Control click to select multiples. I know that that was that's a big topic of how you can select multiples at once, but let's say you have a few. Add selected elements to project. And what that'll do is after a minute or so, it will add all sections into your project. From there, there's two different ways to actually export, pardon me, export sections out of projects. One, you can do it at the singular section level, just exporting one section that you need to be able to complete your in-flight projects outside of Specpoint. The other way is to export your entire project out of Specpoint into its own folder. So let's say we want to do just one section. You would open up that specific section that you need, and you can click your export button here, which will then run through, do its little final pre-flight checks and whatnot, and then download it into a zip file in the downloads folder. Once that's done, the other way is to utilize this button up here, which is the export function. The difference being that, again, this export button will export all sections included in your project. It will export them straight to, again, zip file here. But that will export every section that is currently within your project. That with this current project, that might take me a second, but I'll at least give you the rundown here. So you would enter in your file name, whether you want them in Word documents or PDF. I would assume with working with them in flight, you would want them in Word documents. You can include any notes to specifier if that's something that you guys are looking for in documents, bookmarks, track changes. And then you would click this export button, and then it'll run through and export everything again into a zip file that will show up here in your downloads folder. Another main difference that I know between the singular export and the full export is that with the full export, you can pick between Word documents and PDFs. If you export a singular section, it will give you both a Word document as well as a PDF in that zip file. So singular exports will give you both. With the full project export, you can have either or. Once those are exported, obviously continue to work in whichever program you have your in-flight projects hosted, whether that's whether you have them just in Word files, Specpoint Cloud, eSpecs, any of those products. You can have them. You can just import them like you would normally, and be good to go. You can include them in any in-flight projects that you have. And I believe that that pretty much covers how to export out of Specpoint and then where it comes to land after you export. Does that sound about right, BC?
Sounds about right. And so basically, once they've exported, they can go ahead and wherever they pull that up or save that file to pull it out from there and work as they usually or have always done in the past, correct?
That's correct. Once you locate the downloaded document, you'll be able to pull it out of the zip file that's contained in, and then work on it as they have in the past.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, and I will go on ahead at this point. We want to picking myself up, bring myself back here on video. I apologize. All right, thank you very much, Jared. And I'm going to hand over to Chris to touch on MasterSpec updates and release notes and an upcoming enhancement that gives an alternate way to export Word docs from Specpoint without having to create a project. Is that right, Chris?
That is correct. So if you don't mind, I'll take the screen back. We'll pass that baton once again.
Go right ahead.
Okay, and you all should be seeing Specpoint again. So keep in mind, in the next couple of weeks, this is not available yet, this particular option, but in the next couple of weeks, we'll be hitting the communications pretty hard. So you're aware of this change when it actually hits Specpoint. But in the help menu, so you log into Specpoint, initially you're going to be seeing this project research map here. Any which way you log into Specpoint, even if you've already bookmarked your home page here, you should see this help menu in the upper right-hand corner. And the simplest thing we can do is here, click MasterSpec Updates, and you'll get a signed, secure exe file that'll show up in your downloads. Once you double click on this, which I've done so already, you're going to get two different folders, one for MasterSpec supporting documents. So those are all going to be the PDFs for that particular update. And then you're going to get the Microsoft Word files, which I'll open up. Let's open up a good old reliable gypsum board here. And as opposed to what you'll export out of Specpoint, these particular Word files are essentially what you're used to today. They will contain the sustainability links. So keep in mind, sustainability automation is a little bit different in Specpoint. That's more so parameter driven. The double click links are what's embedded within the Word files. And if you scroll down further to the product types, again, the product type automation, the manufacturer and product selection within a Word environment is a little bit different with Masterworks. So this is more of a Masterworks friendly deductive type of approach that we're taking here. So pretty basic. That's probably the shortest demo I've ever done in my lifetime, Specpoint included. Again, this particular option is not yet within Specpoint. Currently, you will see the MasterSpec updates option right now. That'll only give you the MasterSpec release notes. And just wanted to take a quick step back and just talk about some of the differences, why you would choose one way or another. So what Jared demonstrated versus what I did. The main advantages of updates within Specpoint of creating your project or project of record is one, flexibility. So if you're looking for more flexibility to include specific sections, specific product types even, you can actually use the control click functionality that Jared mentioned. Control click will actually allow you to choose the section and particular product types. Sometimes you won't even have a product type in your master because it doesn't make sense for the projects that you do. So a lot of individuals like the flexibility of creating their update files within Specpoint. The other thing is real-time updates. So within Specpoint, if a manufacturer gets consolidates or gets purchased or whatever, maybe changes their name, those changes are updated in our product database real time, as opposed to the quarterly updates that you're used to. And then finally, transition planning. When it comes to building a familiarity with the workspace, and really, when you think about longer term, you're importing documents into Specpoint. A lot of you do have custom office masters. If you're leveraging anything that comes out of as a Specpoint export, and you're using that as your baseline to integrate your own custom edits, that'll be an easier way to transition to Specpoint longer term, because those files will have a lot less import errors as opposed to some of the masters that you've had for years that work within Word, but may not necessarily correlate well with a database. Now, obviously, the advantages of choosing this MasterSpec updates option maintains business continuity. You can use Masterworks to its fullest potential. You don't have to rely on any automation within Specpoint. And it's a quick, easy download. It's a familiar process. It's quick. Gets you to where you need to, very quickly. Just keep in mind that these files are not intended for use within other platforms. That's something that the AIA strictly prohibits. So obviously we want to keep those kind of things in mind. But these are the two options. And just wanted to add, when we talk about the Specpoint updates, as Jared showed, we actually made significant performance upgrades to the quick add functionality and also the export for these kind of use cases. So keep that in mind. You may have done this process a little while ago and you might have missed those updates. So keep that in mind. But that's all I had. You're busy. I'll let you take the screen.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much for that, Chris. Thank you both for that bit of information. Okay, now all existing customers should already have access to Specpoint. You should have received a Deltek new user invite email with instructions to activate your Specpoint login. If you cannot locate this email, please contact your customer success manager, your CSM, for your login information. Next, take advantage of the webinars and trainings on the Customer Assistance Program page in Specpoint and the Deltek Learning Zone. Your Deltek support are your CSM, sales team, and support services. Please take note of these contact information. I'll also be sending this PowerPoint slides along with the recording from today's webinar in a few days. All right, so we get to the Q&A section of today's webinar. I see that we already have some questions coming in here. I do apologize. Once again, we're not able to answer raised hands, so please type in the Q&A box any questions that you might have. All right, let's see here. Chris, are there any questions that you see that you'd like to take right off the bat?
Oh man, so many good ones. Let's see, I'll take just in terms of, let's see, how frequently is MasterSpec updated? I think I get that one quite a bit. So through Specpoint, that's more of a real-time update approach to an extent. So obviously when it comes to anything really related to manufacturers, products, that is more your real-time updates. Anything that we're doing, maybe to fix any sort of error or to make any quick, maybe high priority updates, such as like a reference standard change, for example, we can push those through Specpoint on demand. So Specpoint will get updates a lot quicker. In terms of the MasterSpec updates link that I showed, that's a quarterly cadence. So we're going to be maintaining that quarterly cadence regardless, just that there will be some updates in between within the Specpoint environment. Another question when it comes to single file export, kind of a little bit of a deviation, talking about track changes and notes to specifier. So the single section export does show track changes. It does not show notes to specifier. The full project manual export has the option to turn track changes on or off, and also notes to specifier on or off. So you get a couple more settings there. And the other thing I wanted to mention too, because I actually run into this quite a bit. Whenever you're running, the question here was, really, do we have to wait for export to finish within Specpoint? And the answer is no. And I do this quite a bit. What I do is I actually open up another tab of Specpoint, run whatever large process I want, whether it's running a report, whether it's running an export, an import, for example. Those can tend to take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. Maybe a little bit longer, depending on how many updates you're actually exporting out of Specpoint. If you're taking the full library, God bless you, that's going to take quite a bit of time. Now that export, you can always put it on the other tab. It'll keep running simultaneously. You can also you can modify that existing project. You can take another project. Maybe you have multiple tabs of the same project. Really just leverage, at the end of the day, the web advantage of Specpoint, where you can actually open up different tabs and run simultaneous processes. Again, I do it all the time. I usually like to run, if I'm importing, say, 50 sections and doing a large export, I've done both of those simultaneously while also editing a project. So something that we don't really mention often, but you don't have to sit there and wait and go get a coffee for that export to finish or import to finish. Just leave it running on the side.
Okay, and just a quick reminder, we can't answer raised hands. Please type your questions in the Q&A box. I will be sending a copy of today's webinar recording in a few days. Please be on the lookout for that, because I see a few people say, can you show that again, the demo again? But you will be getting this, and so that way you can rewatch at your own convenience. Jared, Chris, any other questions on here that are jumping out related to the demo?
I do see a couple here. One of them is there a way to export directly from Specpoint to an eSpecs project and or eSpecs masters? The way that you would do that would be just like you have in the past with regards to importing a custom section into eSpecs using that import function. There is no direct one-to-one pull a file from Specpoint and then upload it into eSpecs to have your entire project all at once. You would export your sections from Specpoint into your Word docs and then upload those into an already pre-established project in eSpecs, just like you would import, like, let's say, a manufacturer section or some proprietary section like that. So it's kind of when you want to transition one into another, you have to bring it in as section dictates. There was another one here real quick. Can you download more than one section, or is it one or all? In this case, for Specpoint, it is one or all. You can do just like I showed earlier, you can do a single section export, where if you're looking to just add a supplementary section into an in-flight project in Word document or one of the legacy products, you could do that as a singular export. Or if you're wanting to pull multiple different sections, you would add in the sections you need into your Specpoint project, and then you can click on that export button again, like I showed, and fill in the file name and export from there. So it's not, you can export one singular section at a time or the whole project.
Nice. And I had a couple too, BZ, I wanted to address a little bit. They don't really play off of what Jared mentioned, but a couple things I think that are very relevant. Great questions. One of them has to do with formatting. So keep in mind that Specpoint has a default style guide. You can always go into the format tab. So when you're in the workspace, you'll see at the very top, you'll see that format tab. If you want to create, you can just duplicate our default style guide. You can modify it to be Times New Roman, 10-point font. If you want to, create the unit of measure fields, make them black instead of that teal and red that we currently have. You can make all those adjustments using that format, and that will apply to all things export. You can also do the same thing with the headers and footers. So keep that in mind. Another question, good question about revision date. So the last revision date on the downloaded master. So these, in this new release that I mentioned in my demo, we will have the revision date up in the upper right-hand corner, as we currently have them in the Word document. So in the upper right-hand corner, we'd write 6/24 or whatever the date is there. So if you need that revision date for any reason, that will be up there in the upper right-hand corner. Otherwise, keep in mind, we do also have the release notes, whether you're in Specpoint using that download folder or you're just needing to see the release notes. We always list all the different sections, when they were updated, what types of updates, how severe the updates were or not. And that'll be your guide as to really, before you get into the nitty-gritty comparing options, creating compared track changes files, you can actually start there at the release notes. Couple other questions we had here. So good question on, do all decisions need to be made in Specpoint, and can options be downloaded for content specialists to choose from? So you have the option to really work within Specpoint. If you want to create if you want to make any sort of decisions early on, you certainly can do that in Specpoint and export it. And if, for all those track changes, they are also included on that exported file. Obviously, your track changes settings in Microsoft Word will carry on. So if you need to just, ideally, you'd have everybody within Specpoint in a common environment making, those decisions and modifying projects together. I think that's the best value proposition, but that's not always realistic. But keep in mind, you can always take that offline. If you need to import back again, you certainly can. And like I said, if you're modifying anything that comes out of Specpoint and you're bringing it back in, generally, you're going to have way less problems to deal with in the future. And then I just really wanted to, last thing, mention Masterworks as the add-in, and if it's going to be still available. So yes, the timeline, I think we have it going through end of 2025 in terms of availability of Masterworks add-in. So you can continue to use Masterworks, all those rich macros for any reason. And then, as I mentioned, some of that stuff is also within Specpoint. So for example, like the formatting, a lot of that is in Specpoint already. So if you need to do any sort of, formatting, header, footer formatting, anything like that, before you get it out of Specpoint, you certainly can. And keep in mind that Masterworks is compatible with those Specpoint exports. Obviously, Specpoint has a different way of handling sustainability and product type automation. So the double click links will be processed within Specpoint instead of offline with Masterworks. But if you need to do any sort of advanced formatting, or you need to generate, for some reason, any sort of report that Specpoint does not have, that Masterworks does have, you can still use Masterworks with a Specpoint export.
Okay.
But yeah, that's everything. I know there's a ton of questions, great questions, but we'll look to answer, I think, most of them offline if we can.
Yeah. There is this one last question though about the updates. When the MasterSpec update feature goes live, will the updates go all the way back to Q4 2023 version? It is safe to say that the MasterSpec update feature is already live in Specpoint. Isn't that correct? I think that person is mistaking that with the feature, with the ability to be able to export Word docs from the MasterSpec update link without creating a project, right? Am I correct in saying that, Chris?
Yes, yes. Specpoint is loaded with the latest and greatest. So again, if you need to go back for any reason and get, a file that was updated in Q1 or previous, you can use a project. Going forward, that link is actually going to only show what's really Q2 and onwards. So if you need anything previous to that, either, get it from the project or reach out to us. Maybe we can help you get it more efficiently if needed.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jared. All right, now the 3-part Specpoint training webinar series helps kick you off on your Specpoint adoption journey. This is a 3-week webinar series that tackles project training, Office Master training, Revit integration, and Specpoint best practices training. These are 1-hour webinars with live Q&A sessions. Project training explores the collaborative process of creating, developing, and reviewing projects in Specpoint using MasterSpec or your own custom content. We will review how to tailor your process based on your experience and discipline. Additionally, we will explore how consultants and design team members can be integrated into the process. Office Master training delves into the process of importing custom masters into Specpoint. We will also review how to integrate content updates, guidelines, and standards into your masters. Revit integration and Specpoint best practices training will explore the process of connecting specifications to model elements. We will review the setup required to power the integration and process of coordinating elements throughout the project lifecycle. And Specpoint best practices helps automate specification development. Now to register, scan the QR code or find the registration link in the chat. I'll give you a moment here for those that would like to go ahead and scan that code. You can go ahead and register, and you can also forward that link over to others in your organization that may benefit. Part 1 usually is the first week of the month. The part 2 will be the next week, and then part 3 is the 3rd week. All right. Now, as a reminder, your account team is here to help service your account needs. Please reach out if you need assistance with your Specpoint adoption. You will receive an email with the recording of today's session, the PowerPoint slides, and answers to any questions we didn't get to during the webinar. And that's a wrap for today's Coffee Break webinar. And from myself, Chris, Jared, and Deltek Spec Solutions team, we hope you have a spectacular day. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.